Good afternoon and welcome to the northeastern corner of magnificent South Africa. Try and have a guess what you're looking at now. We're in the northern part or northwestern part of the Great Kruger National Park, the western fringes thereof, the Sabi Sands, Djuma Private Game Reserve, to the west of us, Arathusa, 1,500 hectares, 4,000 acres of magnificent wilderness wonderland that we are very privileged to call home, and equally privileged to bring to you live for this sunset safari with WildEarth. My name is James Hendry. On camera today we have got Andrew, who is dressed as though he's about to step onto the boardwalk at the beach and order himself a pina colada. He isn't. He's going to be working all day on the camera. In the final control we have got Jerry on the vocals and Louise on the keys. And then we have got Brentley Smith being filmed by the diminutive but massively skilled Chapiso Sanchez Seleke. That is a buffalo, in case you were wondering. Of course, we are operating with the super zoom, and this buffalo is completely unaffected by us. We're sitting only about 2 meters from him. Andrew, what does your zoom focus distance thing say? Andrew can actually measure how far away it is.
3 meters.
3 meters away, sorry about that. Well, Andrew, you're a meter behind me, so it's 2 meters from me because I'm braver than Andrew. So Andrew's sitting a meter behind me for defensive purposes. And they're totally unaffected by us. Some buffalo bulls, which are now becoming a regular feature when we start these drives and throughout the drives, because they come and they sit around the water here, because we are in the midst of what can now certainly be described as a proper drought. Buffalo bulls, and they will steer clear of the herds, either because they're too old and decrepit to fight for mating opportunities and therefore don't wish to knock about with all the kids and the ladies, or because it's just easier to sit around the water here, and if they're just not quite big enough or not feeling quite strong enough, they'll seek safety in numbers around the bulls rather than the extra energetic effort of being around the herd. Wonderful with this super zoom shot there. You can see that he really does have the face of a moneylender or a judge. You can see his jaw muscles going there as he chews the cud. A lovely picture of his nostrils. Thank you, Andrew. And that's actually quite interesting. Just hold it there, Andrew. You can see his teeth. It's very flat, chopping incisors, and that's for grazing. He also uses that tongue for grazing extensively, and behind those incisors, of course, a whole 2 huge plates full of molars that are grinding and grinding and grinding. You can see there, the second time he's chewing this food, and it's going to swallow down into the second chamber of his stomach, where the bacteria and enzymes there will do the business of extracting what nutrients they can from the dry cellulose in the grass that he's been eating. That's wonderful. And then they're not the only things around here that are enjoying the taste of the water. Well, I mean, the taste of the water is definitely suspect, because I watched, in fact, this very buffalo actually go to the loo, make toilet in the water there, so the taste is probably fairly not very delicious. But there are other buffalo there, and there are birds swooping in and out. And there's a cinnamon-breasted bunting just sitting on the other end there. Well spotted. There he is. Beautiful cinnamon-breasted bunting. We had some wonderful sightings of a golden-breasted one this morning. That's the cinnamon-breasted version. Totally different species, of course, but equally beautiful. And they're just sitting around here looking for some water to drink. Again, astonishing that they're able to drink this water, given that you and I would be in hospital within seconds of putting this sort of water in our mouths. Then there's also a hardy-dar ibis to the right-hand side, shimmering in the sun. To the uninitiated, it might look like a glossy ibis, which is another kind of ibis we get in South Africa. That is not a glossy ibis. And then, so that's the hardy-dar there. Andrew, if you go to the one on the far right-hand side, you can see he's got his wings open. Now, I'm just going to look with my powerful binoculars. I'm not sure why those wings are open. It's a juvenile. It's a little one. It's got shorter wings, at least not shorter beak than an adult. And perhaps, I don't think it's injured, but maybe it's just hot, and that's certainly holding the wings out like that will help it to cool down. It's not that hot today, though. It's only about 32 degrees or centigrade, or 85 degrees Fahrenheit, so not that hot. It's actually been a very pleasant day weather-wise. And then there's obviously the usual suspects, the oxpeckers on the buffalo, and of course a lovely blacksmith lapwing, the other end of the pan there. So called because of their call that apparently sounds like a farrier or blacksmith hammering on an anvil. Now, I have heard a farrier hammering on an anvil. It sounds nothing like the call of that bird. And apparently Geraldine in the final control says she can see a buffalo, not a buffalo, a butterfly on the buffalo. I'm not sure what she's looking at. She might have gone mad. It's not surprising. Very strange. Oh, there we go. I can see it. Well done, Gerald. It's a joker. It's an African joker, and it's just behind the back side of the far buffalo there, Andrew. That's the one that you've got in the middle of the screen there. Yeah, that's it. It's a beautiful orange buffalo called an African joker that has now obviously disappeared. Right, the butterfly has moved on. I'm getting confused between buffaloes and butterflies now. And there's also a yellow-billed oxpecker, lonely yellow-billed oxpecker on the back of the far buffalo there, Andrew. The closest oxpecker to us is yellow-billed. There we go. It's got just a little yellow base to the bill. Corel, I was truly hoping no one was going to ask me this question, because I'm not actually sure of the answer, and I've actually wondered about it myself. I made mention of the fact that this buffalo was chewing his cud, and that when he swallows for the second time, the food will go down into the second chamber of the stomach and not into the first, where it's currently sitting. And Corel, you want to know what is the mechanism by which it bypasses the first stomach. Corel, I don't know. I think what happens is that by the time it gets eaten the second time round, it's much denser, and I think it actually sinks into the bottom of the first chamber and then goes into the second. On the first time round, it kind of floats on the top. As far as I understand, that's how it works. I might be entirely wrong. So any of you who have a background in livestock digestion or some kind of idea of how a ruminant gets the second chewing bolus down into the second chamber of the stomach, please let us know. Corel, great question. Yeah, it is a little hardy-dar. The little hardy-dar's begging now. It was just... The little one there was begging from the one that just flew in. Obviously been instructed to not beg and go and have a drink. Smart Redhead, you want to know how many stomachs a buffalo has. Remember, these are not water buffalo. Water buffalo are found in Asia and in northern Australia, and they were introduced, but they're not found here. These are called African or Cape buffalo, and they're very different from water buffalo. And Smart Redhead, they have got 4 chambers in the stomach, exactly like all ruminants, from giraffe to impala to nyala to kudu to domestic cattle, sheep, all of them. 4 chambers to the stomach, very efficient method of eating, if slightly distasteful, given that you have to kind of be sick into your own mouth, re-chew it, and then follow it into the second chamber. They don't seem to mind too much. And one last thing here before we move on. You can see this buffalo now that we started with has gone fast asleep. So let's just whisper so that he doesn't wake up. Little buffalo making a snooze. So this is one of the great things about the bush and a summer afternoon like this. It is the most restful place. And if ever you're feeling stressed out and worried by life, and a summer afternoon out here will leave you feeling infinitely better. And there's also some buffalo there. They're not buffalo, butterfly. Good grief, the small flying insects, not the great heaving bovids. Some little orange butterflies. I nearly said it again. Can you see them, Andrew? Now, Pamela, while I'm trying to spot this butterfly, you want to know if an elephant would drink from this water. It would if it was desperate, but it wouldn't unless it was fairly desperate. They would try and find other water. They're one of the few species that really do prefer to drink clean water rather than the sort of sewage of buffalo. We watched Karula drink here the other day, and she had no problem at all sipping from this kind of cesspit. All right, I think we're going to move on now. Let's not wake up. Oh dear, we've woken him. Sorry. We're going to move on, see what else we can find.
Let's just have a look at that oxpeckers.
Oh, you want to? Oh, yes. All right, Andrew, we can do what you want to do. So we just want to look at the oxpecker there. We have the super zoom function on this camera, and so you can really get a nice idea of him or her. They're actually such beautiful birds. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Oh, that is a red-billed oxpecker and Tish Klasm, I think your name is, a brand new viewer on YouTube, and you are enjoying the... Okay, I'm not following what the final control is rattling off at me here. Tish, you're a new viewer on YouTube, and it's wonderful to have you with us, and I'm so glad you're enjoying it, and thank you for taking the time to get hold of us. Those are red-billed oxpeckers, one of 2 oxpecker species that we get here, the other being the yellow-billed, which we saw just now. Oh, that's wonderful. That's a great shot. Quite substantial claws the oxpeckers have got, you know. Yeah, quite substantial little claws. And there they go. All right, Mike and Montana, as you say, let sleeping buffaloes lie. We'll press on and see what else we can find. We'll probably go towards the other water holes we've been around. I don't think I'm going to be able to start the car. No, I'm not. Okay, we're going to have to hand over to Brent. I'm going to ask Jerry if we can do that yet, because we have to turn the car off in order to start it. It's all very complicated arrangement. Negative. We can't cross over to Brent, apparently. I'm not sure what he's doing. He might be perhaps relieving himself. I'm not sure. Okay. Oh, there's some starlings. We don't need to go to Brent. There's some starlings over there, Andrew. Cape glossy starlings. And now what do we need? Oh, there are two species of starling there. There's a Birchall starling to the right, and either a Cape glossy or greater blue-eared glossy starling to the left. I think it's a Cape glossy. Doesn't have that sort of dark ear patch behind the eye. So those are two of our beautiful starling species that we get here. We get another 3, and look at them staying out of the way of the hardy-dar as he comes up to drink. They all moved away. So we're just waiting for Brent, and then we'll move on. But there's lots to see around here. And Andrew, I'm just going to tell you about it. I'm not going to tell you to move the camera in case it moves. But that butterfly there on the far end. Can you see it? A beautiful shot of an African joker, if it doesn't fly by the time we get there. There we go. No, that's not it, but that's fine. That's perfect. We've got 2 species there. So it's the African joker flapping its wings there, and in front of it was an African monarch. And the monarch, of course, will be very familiar to many of you from North America, where they do migrate in huge numbers. So it's not the African monarch, but it is a similar thing. Alrighty, I think we've exhausted most of the content around here. Let's head across to Brent Leo Smith. Apparently he's back on the car, ready to welcome you onto the back of his vehicle, and I will carry on from here and we'll see you shortly.
Good evening, afternoon, and welcome to this sunset safari. My name is Brent Leo Smith. I have tabs on camera, and we are traversing through the wilderness of Djuma Private Game Reserve at the moment. We might go have a squiz at what's happening on Arathusa a little later. I'm on my way towards the treehouse waterhole, where the elephants have dug up some natural seeps, seeing if there are any animals in this really hot weather, utilizing that water coming up from the ground. If any of you out there are new, don't forget we are live. So you are seeing what we are seeing at the same time. Also, you can ask us questions, anything you might have wondered about the bush, about animals, and you can do that by using the hashtag SafariLIVE on Twitter, or you can use the email address questions@wildearth.tv. So after a cool and overcast start to the day, it's now a blistering low-felt summer's afternoon. South African summer welcome to Tiance Jr., who's a new viewer, and he's in Margate, which is in South Africa. So he started watching at the beginning of the festive season, and he went down to visit his parents. They live on the beautiful South African coastline, and says hopefully they'll be coming through to pay us a visit here at Djuma in June or July. So we look forward to meeting you in person, James. So you can see from the greenery that was on the ground a couple of weeks ago, a lot of the grass is actually being burnt by the sun and going back to its sort of winter colouring. So we are in quite a big drought at the moment. We're not the only South African province, state as you would call in North America, that is experiencing bad drought. Hopefully some life-giving rain will come shortly. Smart Redhead, welcome on the Sunset Safari. Smart Redhead says she thinks she would like to start a bird list. We really encourage you guys to keep not only bird lists, but tree lists, butterfly lists, mammal lists, insect lists, any list you would like to keep, and to definitely keep us updated on how those lists progress. So we're definitely going to have to try and find you some birds on this Sunset Safari, Smart Redhead. Approaching the treehouse water hole at the moment. Hopefully there might be something there. Quite a humorous little comment from Clown Sharon. He says, I wonder what amazing things the guitars and James and Safari Samurai Brent might find, and the only thing I've found is a very fast disappearing grey bottom of a warthog. It's obviously been lying up in those water seeps down here that we had a good look at yesterday. Let's see if we can catch a view of it before it disappears too far. Oh, and there's our friendly impala with the wounded eye and the single horn. We have been keeping a look at him for a couple of days, and that injury seems to be getting a little bit better. It must be incredibly uncomfortable though. See, look at that. Doesn't actually see what's happening there, and he walked into that branch. Obviously the biggest threat facing an impala that has got one eye is not being able to see the leopard sneak up on you. But fortunately for him, he doesn't normally hang alone. He's got a few friends with who have got two sets or two eyes and are able to do some spotting for him. So we have been seeing him around this treehouse waterhole for the last few days, and it's probably because of the permanent water here. But we will definitely keep a lookout for him in the coming weeks. So there was a warthog that had disappeared down the little drainage system. Maybe catch a view of it shortly. Very warm welcome to Steph on YouTube. Steph says if they start a butterfly or moth list will I find an African lunar moth. Well, actually, Scotty and James found one already this year, so hopefully we will find another one. We do see them from time to time. We definitely will try to find you an African lunar moth. So it seems like Queen Karula has taken off into the air and disappeared. I actually think she's probably still within that block that she had the kill. And that's why we haven't found any tracks coming out. Hopefully, as it gets a bit warm this evening, she'll head out for a drink. It's really hot like this, we'll find a lot of the animal and bird species will be taking refuge from this beating African sun in the shade, so always important to check carefully in especially the heavy shaded areas, specifically for things like leopards. They don't like lying out in the blazing sun, far too hot. So that's why we're working these areas around the small drainage lines or dry creeks, and get bigger trees, thickets, so offering a bit more shade. And I haven't checked the Muwati, which is our biggest dry riverbed here, in a few days, so I think that's where we're going to head to next. Welcome Marlene from Montreal on the Sunset Safari. Marlene would like to know where are all the elephants? Are they gone because of the lack of water? You will find that they will probably come back in a day or two. There is enough water to hold them within the area, but they need to eat such vast amounts of vegetable matter that they do move a lot. So at the moment I've been hearing that there are a lot of elephants to the north of us. So hopefully they'll be on their way back today, or at least tomorrow on the sunrise safari. Remy in San Diego, on the topic of the elephants, would like to know, do elephants get moisture from the trees since there is a drought? They will get a certain level of moisture from the trees, but nothing like what they need. They do need to drink. They drink on average about 100 liters of water a day. If I remember correctly, I can do my maths here. 4.5 liters is a gallon. About 20 gallons, just over 20 gallons of water a day. And there we go. go. See, even the kudus taking respite from the sun in the shade. There we go. A female greater kudu. Hiding from the heat. There's a couple of them actually, but that's the only one we can see right in the depths of that thicket. One of the larger antelopes we get here in the African bush, in this particular area, and one of the 3 what she spotted. One of the 3 traphalagids or spiral-horned antelope we get. Oh, snake, right next to us. Come down right here on the ground. You got him? Going into the bottom of this dry day. You guys gonna go up. Beautiful little sand snake. Tibbs is not the biggest fan of snakes I've ever met, but he is a great cameraman. Isn't that incredible? How pretty is that little sand snake? Where is he off to now? He's moving along that branch. All the sand snake species are some of the fastest moving snakes in the world, even though this one is going along quite slowly at the moment. If I remember correctly, it should be the eastern side-bellied or stripe-bellied. Eastern stripe-bellied, not the eastern stripe-bellied, it's the other one. Western stripe-bellied sand snake. This is the fastest snake in southern Africa when it decides to get moving. At the moment, it's hunting. I've lost sight of it. I got a shadow. I got it again. So it prefers sort of dry savanna. Very common in this area. Looks like there might be a bit of a bulge. It could have eaten recently, but I don't think that. I think that's just the way it's lying on that branch at the moment. And it is one of the few snake species that's really active during the hottest hours of the day. So its favorite food are lizards and geckos, but it'll readily take small birds and rodents. It's mildly venomous, but the venom in particular is not to have any too much harmful effect on man. Look how the camouflage is incredible. I think if we move in a little bit, we might get a better view there, Tibbsy. Oh, I think he's going to move off, and so are we. And while we do that, let's go from a reptile to an arachnid, and both are venomous.
Yes, and yeah.
Hello everybody, we're sitting at the door to the home of a Pistithalmus glabifrons, a burrowing scorpion, and I'm not sure if you can see his pincer, but he's trying to pull my stick away from me. Andrew, did you see him at all?
Yeah, he had a brief visual.
A brief view of his pincer coming out. He's quite a wily fellow. So you saw it as we came live. I'm going to try once more to entice him out, aka irritate him until he grabs my stick. He is holding it, so if you watch here, you watch the stick. There, you can see it move. Now we'll just keep pulling a little bit. See if he doesn't grab it again. Got to be very patient to be pulling out these scorpions. You got view now, Andrew? I don't think he's going to come all the way out. He's very clever, this fellow. Anyway, this is his burrow, and it's a very big and well-used burrow, and there's all sorts of detritus here that he's left. This is his sort of midden, if you like, and there is a whole lot of millipede exoskeleton. There's an exoskeleton of what looks like a talky beetle. You can see there, shining in the sun. It's the exoskeleton. It's the sort of fused elytra, or the forewings of a beetle that have been eaten. What else have we got? Ooh, we've actually even got a pincer from the scorpion. So either he's eaten another scorpion, or he's shed his skin at some stage and put the skin out. How's that? That's wonderful. So there's his vicious little pincer. Doesn't open. And this scorpion is not toxic to human beings. They give you a little nip with their pincers, but their tails are very kind of mild venom and only used for killing their prey. So that's what he eats. I wonder if he didn't eat another scorpion there. That's quite fun. Let's just give this one last tug and see if he will show his real pincer. And then we'll leave him be. No, he's not going to. Anyway, a wonderful little burrow here, and I mean, I'm fairly amazed that it's so deep, and I suspect it's been used for a long, long time. The fact that it's been dug out like this, I mean, I can't see what else would have dug it out, unless something like a civet or a mongoose came to try and dig him out, you know, and he burrowed his way back in, and that's why there's this kind of depression there. Anyway, very well kept little burrow, and a very neat little midden outside. I mean, I know some human beings who are less neat than that. Some of them in the camp. Wonderful. On we go. I believe Brent found a snake, which is very exciting. Sharon, you're wondering what Tarzan James and Safari Samurai Brent will show you this afternoon. Well, certainly a small piece of scorpion and a snake so far. So I wonder what else I can climb today. I did thoroughly enjoy my tree climbing yesterday. Okay, let's go across to Brent. Apparently we've got some microphone issues. We'll sort them out and see you just now.
So we're still heading down towards the Mawati. You can see the baby impala, another impala in the shade here. Keeping out of the sun. But let's get down to this drainage line. Hopefully we will see some interesting things down there. Above, I spotted one of my favorite antelopes. Not one we see, speaking of antelopes, not the one we were looking for, but nevertheless, nice male waterbuck. Very wide horns on that particular individual. It always looks so fluffy. And the reason for that is they have a very different type of fur to the rest of the animals. It's far more coarse. And it's actually hollow. It's designed far more like a porcupine quill. So it's a quill. And they use that to help with keeping water off themselves. It also helps with water retention as well. So the two antelope species that have that very distinct fur is waterbuck and Gemsbok. Gemsbok is an oryx, a desert living species, and obviously they have the same adaptation for very different reasons. With the desert dwelling species, it's to help them with water retention so they don't lose water. And with waterbuck, it's to help them be a little bit waterproof. Okay. Well, there we go. Working on the edges of these drainage lines where there's a bit of a bit thicker bush and a little bit of cool. We're going to hopefully be finding quite a few different species that are utilizing the thickets and the shade around here to their advantage in this very hot summer's afternoon. I said what I'm hoping to find while we're down here is one of my favorite antelopes, one we don't see too often, but incredibly brave. So I thought I spotted a nice male one of these from the top. Oh, sorry, Franklins. Here. Spotted. It's another one of the trafalgarids. We get 3 trafalgarids here on Juma Private Game Reserve. And I'm sure I spotted my favorite of the 3 crossing the drainage line from up on the high bank there. But they can be quite shy and retiring. So let's check very carefully where it's disappeared to. He might have gone into these little thickets. We might have to loop round to find him. There he is. So quick. There he is, through that gap there. And he's moving off into the bush. You got him there, Tebs? It's a little male bushbuck. My favorite of the trafalgarids we get here at Juma. Not the one we see too much of. And in Zulu, one of the few animals that there's a different name for the male and female. I'm going to try to see if we can get another view of him. And then also on an exciting note, we seem to be surrounded by an immense amount of butterflies in this area, so we'll definitely be having a look at those shortly. Just want to see if we can get a view of that bushbuck through the thickets. Unfortunately not. So he might pop up again with a slightly better spot, but let's have a look at some of these butterfly species we've got here. So we've got, there we go, that little bush there, we've got like 3 on it. Oh, the one that flew off, was it that? Come back down, there's another one. Oh, that's an African vagrant. You can see that wonderful lime green under the wing. And there we have a female scarlet tip. And now hopefully we'll find a male scarlet tip. Let's have a look, where else are there? There's some blues just to cause trouble. And there's also, where are we looking now? So there's a brown-veined white. This way. There we go. And you can see that very distinct brown veins in the white wing. And they look to be feeding off these little sedges and weeds that are popping up here. Okay, so we've got the 3 more common species. I did see an acrea somewhere. I'm just waiting for it to fly again. And it looked like a little acrea. There's the acrea. Very pretty. If we come in, I think, what is it there? Oh, no, it's flown, of course. It's above slightly. It's flying. Flying, come on, land. That's coming towards us now. orange one there, flying there. But it's not landing. Oh. There we go, it's landed. Got him there. Oh. A little bit to the right. It's of the white one. To the right slightly. Oh, there's a sulfur tip. Where's the acra gone? No, it's still there. I want to take it off again now. Let's go back to those two there. Oh, there's the acra, and now we've got all three in shot. There we got a little scarlet tip, or now only the scarlet tips there, and you can see the male a little bit more distinct than the female. It has got very vague orange tips. Oh, and the acra fluttering through. That acra is going to be the difficult one to get, and it's possibly the only one we don't have. We haven't seen out of all of these yet. It's flying, it's flying. Stop flying, I command you, butterfly. Oh, he's disappeared. A big welcome to Ian, who's a new viewer watching us on Apple TV. I think that's the first person I've heard watching us on Apple TV. Ooh. Don't. Come back. Now, this is another acra. It's proving to be difficult. Another one we haven't got on the camera before. And I'm just going to see if it lands. And Ian is finding this really interesting. He says it's like being on safari with us. Sorry, Ian, I'm concentrating on butterflies at the moment. Looks like there he is. Very cool acra species, but he is flying around. Oh yes, we haven't got this one on camera yet. I'm going to have to go into my book to ID it, but I can ID the family. Isn't that beautiful? Let's find the butterfly book. Isn't that an exquisite butterfly? And quite often one of the big problems with butterflies is that even though we might be able to get the family, sometimes they're not in the book because there are so many species. So sometimes I have to try to get a photograph and then send them off to a herpetologist and to identify them for me. And when it comes to butterflies, I'm very much an amateur. I just like knowing things, and this is my challenge to myself over this period of the year. I might be quite excited. This could even be a new butterfly species for me. It could be a pseudo-acra, which means it is a fake acra. It's a mimic. If you hear that dig, it's just me getting a few photos for ID purposes. Okay. So now, in case it flies off, we've still got a decent picture to look at while we have a look in the book. Bit difficult to see on the screen, but there it is. But for a second, I was pretty sure acra, but we do have pseudo-acras, which basically, it's a mimic. So it is a harmless butterfly that will mimic something like an acra that carries quite a strong hydrogen cyanide poison. It'll mimic the look and the flight pattern of those butterflies to make sure predators don't try to eat them. And there we go. And I think acras are my favorite butterflies, but there are many types of them. Have a look there. Very dark, but striped in the wing, not that one. I think it could be a pseudo-acra. Yep. It's not an acra, it's a fake acra. Obviously, pseudo-acra. They look very similar to the acras, but just not quite the same. There we go. Have a look again. See, what I'm looking for is very distinct sort of white lines on the outside of the wing, not much lighter there. So I think it's a Pseudoacria iritis imitator. So that one. There's quite a lot of variation in these butterflies, but let's have a look what the common name is. And let me have a look. Pseudoacria. Pseudoacria 164. So quite often with a lot of these type of things, insects and that, a lot of them do not have common names, but I'll just double check if this one does, and that it occurs here, the one I think it might be, and it doesn't. So that's the thing that it looked it might be. So what I'm going to do is I've got a decent photo of that. I'm going to send it off to a friend of mine who's at the University of the Witwatersrand and is an expert on butterflies, and hopefully we'll get an ID for that later in the week, and I will tweet it. So from pseudoacrias and insects to bovids and mammals.
We're watching a breeding herd of buffalo, everybody, not far from where the scorpion was. But in this tree above us, there's a most astonishing noise, and I think it's being made by some wattled starlings. But I can't actually see them, and it sounds like the most mammalian sort of noise. It sounds like a sort of troop of dwarf mongoose on steroids. They've now obviously stopped doing what they were doing. Anyway, we can't even see any of them. I saw one of them flittering about earlier, but they're not there anymore. Anyway, big herd of buffalo here. Not an enormous herd, quite small by the standards. There. Listen to that. It's the most bizarre noise. Let me just play the sound. I'll just quickly find the starling on my app. Right, listen to this. I'm going to turn the volume up. This is the wattled starling. It does seem to be eliciting a response from the tree. See if they come and look. I wonder if there isn't a nest in that tree. It's definitely what it is. It's wattled starlings. Sounds like a puppy barking. I wonder if there isn't a nest in the tree, Andrew. What do you think?
I can see one with my eyes, but I just can't find it on the camera.
I'm going to sneak back a bit. It's a great mystery, this. It would be fascinating if we found a nest. Hello, Kit. You're 10 years old and your mother is making this your science class. Well, Kit, welcome to it. I'm very glad that this is your science class. While you're sitting there and we're driving around here, try and tell me if you can work out how far Sirius is from us in kilometers, given that it's 4.2 light years away and that the speed of light is 300,000 kilometers per second. I'm joking, you don't have to do that at all. You just have to enjoy being around here, and we'll learn a little bit about the biology of the wonderful places of Africa that you're going to see today. And if you do want to know how far that is, I'll show you how to work it out a little bit later.
You can see one now.
Can you see one, Andrew? Oh yes, there we go. Seems to be extremely good at hiding. So for those of you who have just joined us, wattled starlings are calling from this tree. A flock of completely invisible wattled starlings that sound like a small litter of puppies. You can hear the buffalo all around us going, "Bow, bow." There we have a wattled starling. Well done, Andrew. See what a brilliant colour grey is to be out here, everyone. Yeah, beautiful bird. Brilliant. This herd of buffaloes standing around us, wondering what on earth we can be looking at if not them. Right. Amazing how obvious the bird looks when you know where it is. Let's just go a little bit off-road here to the left-hand side. There are hundreds of buffalo there. And there are the largest set of horns I have yet to see. Not those ones, Andrew. There we go. Now, Marsha, while we look at that incredible rack of horns there, you want to know about a buffalo you saw walking towards the Juma Dam this morning, and you said it sounded like he was wheezing. And could he have TB? Martha, it's more than likely he has TB. All of the buffalo in the Kruger National Park are basically quarantined for tuberculosis, corridor disease, and what's the other one? Foot and mouth sometimes. And while TB is certainly around here, I don't believe, and I mean most people now don't believe, that it actually affects the buffalo tremendously. It might knock a year off their lives, but it might make them wheeze and cough a bit as they get older, but it certainly doesn't tend to affect them hugely. We're not convinced that the TB is killing lions like we used to think it did. And so at the moment, I think the jury is pretty much out on the TB, but we don't think that it's causing a great deal of trouble for the buffalo themselves. The thing is that now every time you hear a buffalo cough and go, you think, oh, he's got TB, doesn't he? There's a young cow coming to say hello to us here. There she is. She seems to be a lot less afraid of us than some of the others. I think she's taken a fancy to Andrew, to be honest. Yes, you have, haven't you, you saucy minx? Who can blame her? Ravi, apparently you had flicked on the Juma Dam camera about 3 a.m. and you saw a buffalo going down to drink, and you want to know when they sleep. I think they sleep probably twice in every 24-hour period, once in the middle of the night and then once in the middle of the day. And it does actually depend largely on the weather. On hot days, they will tend to do not very much during the heat of the day, and they'll sleep in the evening time. At least they'll move around at night. And then on winter's nights, they tend to congregate together in big groups and huddle up for warmth, and then they move around almost continuously during the day. So it really does depend. Now, we're at the height of summer, of course. It's been relatively warm, so I think you'll find them doing quite a lot at night and not very much during the day at this time of the year. You can get sort of an idea of the extent of this herd now. It's not a big one. I'd say probably only about 100 animals, and that's a pretty small buffalo herd. And I've seen this buffalo herd around here before, just not a huge one. A small group of cows, bulls, and one or two youngsters. well, more than one or two. And this is what we'd term a breeding herd of buffalo. And of course, the bovine tuberculosis is not the same as the tuberculosis that affects human beings, and it hasn't crossed this, it's not what we know as a zoonotic disease, it's not a disease that can affect human beings. And so, no, smart redhead, don't worry about that. You can't get TB from, it's a different bacteria, same genus, but it's a different one. You can't get it from buffalo, and you certainly can't get foot and mouth disease from a buffalo. As far as I know, you might if you touched it and if you came into contact with it and it had foot and mouth. But none of these have got foot and mouth. Foot and mouth is obvious. You can see that on any of these bovids. Their feet go all squonk. They get terrible sores on their mouths. Yeah, a very small little herd, this. And there, you see that dust that's being raised as they walk along. It's just a little puff of dust every time they put their feet down. And you shouldn't be seeing that at this time of the year. This time of the year, there should be almost no dust. And you can see in amongst the plants that they're grazing, there's not a lot of grass there. So they'll be looking very hard to find enough grazing during the day. You can see that's bare sand, bare soil, plenty of grass seeds in it, but without the water, it's simply not going to grow. Debbie in Vancouver, you want to know about the huge horns that we saw, and you want to know what I think they would weigh. A heavy buffalo skull weighs probably close on 15 kilograms. So with the associated, or I mean, if you were to cut the bone away and just take a big set of horns, yeah, I'd say between 12 and 20 kilograms, depending on how big the buffalo was. So that big buffalo, I'd say about 20 kilos. Multiply that by 2.2 and we get to about 44 pounds. So that's quite a lot. Is that right? 2.2? 44? Yes, it is correct. 44 pounds. Here comes another unanswerable question, but it's a very interesting one that I've never thought about before. Valerie, very nice query. You've noticed, of course, that these horns are totally smooth, like the wildebeest horns, but that the horns of impala and waterbuck are ridged. And you want to know, is there a biological reason for that, or is there some kind of advantage for it? I don't know. Maybe when they're fighting, you know, those horns that we're talking about tend to be pretty straight, versus these ones which are sort of splayed out to the side, and maybe the straight ones are used more for kind of, you know, they hook into each other and then pull a bit. Maybe that's got something to do with it. I don't know. I imagine it's for grip, actually, when they're fighting. That's what I would say. They don't have the hooks like the wildebeest and the buffalo do. They're also, quite interestingly, not used for the same thing always. Big animals like this tend to have horns. It's expensive to grow horns, and big animals like this, which are obvious and live in herds, tend to have horns for defense against predators quite often, whereas the antelope, waterbuck, and impala, only the males have got horns, and those horns are used largely for fighting each other. They use sort of secretion and hiding to get away, and running away to get away from their predators. They very seldom will turn and face and fight them, and so maybe that's got something to do with it, Valerie. Very nice question. Very nice. So the two major sort of antelope and bovid animals out here have got these long hooked horns like the buffalo and the wildebeest, and they are used primarily, I mean the bulls use them for fighting, but the cows also use them for defense against predators. You can see they smell just like a dairy. They smell just like a herd of cattle, and they even sound like that. And John, you're absolutely correct, of course, that human beings have their own band of feet and mouth disease, it's called. And I remember when I was teaching guitar at a school in Johannesburg, there was an outbreak of feet and mouth disease, and some of the kids had to be quarantined, aka sent home to watch television for a week or two. And it can be, I don't think it hurts you very much, but it's certainly, it's not a pleasant disease to get. John, I thought that you could get that from infected cattle, but maybe you can't. Maybe it's just like the TB, it's a different strain. So TB is a bacterial infection. Foot and mouth, I'm not sure. I think it's also a bacteria. Right. Sorry, John. I think maybe you were making an amusing comment, which of course is now lost because I've made a mess of it. Human beings get foot in mouth disease. I have that quite substantially, John. Foot in mouth disease. Between Brent and I, we have got fairly large foot in mouth disease problems. Brent's feet are of course larger than mine. You said the buffalo look like they have George Washington wigs on. Yes, I suppose they do. It's what gives them that kind of judge look. Thank you for that, Paulie. All right, I think let's leave these buffalo. I'm buffaloed out for the afternoon. What about you, Andrew?
I'd agree with that.
You don't want to sit with them for the rest of the day?
I'll pass, James.
You'll pass, okay. Well, that's good. Oh, no, actually we will be sitting with them for the foreseeable future. That's because I can't start the car, of course. There's another one, Andrew. Apparently Brent is off the vehicle tracking. So we're going to sit here with the waning herd of buffalo as they disappear over the horizon. What else we can show you around here? The other thing to notice, of course, is the vegetation, and some of these sort of scraggly bushes, which would not be here if there was a decent grass sward. So those kind of scraggly bushes that you can see wouldn't be there if the rain had been good, and certainly they'd be being outcompeted by grass. But we've now had 2 dry years, and those bushes are starting to come up. So one of the causes of bush encroachment is a lack of rain. And Joanne, thank you for your comment. You said that when you got home from Kenya, there had been a foot and mouth outbreak, and they made you take your shoes off and either hand them in or sterilize them. So perhaps it does actually transfer to people. It may be, though, that they were afraid you were going to infect the cattle of the United States. You can see them. I mean, buffalo are okay in this kind of these kind of conditions because they can eat dry grass. They can also browse a bit, but they don't worry too much about that. But certainly, by the end of the summer season, if we haven't had some decent rain, there are going to be some skinny buffalo around the place. And Laura, you've obviously been watching for a while. You've seen that the impala have all dropped their lambs. The kudu have dropped a couple of calves. The wildebeest have all dropped their calves. And you want to know if buffalo have a specific breeding season as well. Not so specific, Laura, but they will certainly have a peak around the summertime when the grass is supposed to be a lot thicker than it is now. So yes, they have a breeding peak now, but that's not to say that you wouldn't get the odd calf born in the wintertime. So a peak now, but certainly they can breed any time of the year. They don't have a generally sort of fixed breeding season. And what's quite interesting is that in a herd like this, of course, you've got this mixed group of bulls and cows and youngsters. And I think it's quite interesting because it's very distinct from the harem structure that the impala have. So the impala will, when their females come into estrus, they herd the females into a big group like this. Now, in a buffalo herd like this, you do have a hierarchy of bulls, but because everything is a sort of melee of burping, belching, and moving animals, if you happen not to be a dominant bull and you come across an estrus female and there isn't a dominant bull watching you, you'll hop on there and try and, produce some offspring of your own. And what that has resulted in is, and I know it's something that people comment on quite a lot, is this enormous scrotum that buffalo have. So they have enormous testicles, and that, I suspect, is a function of the fact that what we call sperm competition, where the larger, of course, the testicles are, the greater the amount of sperm you can produce, and therefore, if there are multiple matings with a cow, if you can produce the most sperm, you are more likely, of course, to be the father of whatever calf is born. Now, you find that kind of thing in chimpanzees, which have got enormous testicles for their size. You don't find it in gorillas, of course, because they live in a harem structure. Buffalo, at least, impala somewhere probably in the middle. I think there is an element of it, but certainly nothing like this. And for their size, buffalo have got absolutely enormous scrotums. Right, on the subject... No, not on the subject. That was a horrible foot in mouth. Nearly happened there. Let's head across to Brent Leo Smith, and I'm going to try and restart this car.
So, sticking in the drainage lines has worked in our favor. We've got some male leopard tracks. Quite difficult to see, but they're in the... There we go, along there. He's headed back behind us and up onto the eastern bank of the Moati. So I'm going to head around and do a big loop around the block to make sure none of the tracks come out. If they don't, I'm going to go back to the last track and take a walk along the edge through these thickets on the edge of the Moati. Yay! Leopard tracks, the first one I've seen in a while, or since yesterday. So exciting. So male, it could be Tingana, it could be Mbula, who knows? Unfortunately, it looks like we're from earlier, because someone has driven over them there and they're crossing, and I didn't hear any of them called in this morning. Just pulled it in on the Game Drive channel quickly, see if anyone else wants to come give me a hand in the area. So, Game Drive is very important. Chatting with the other vehicles, obviously the more of us out there are talking to each other, the better chance we've got of finding an animal. Nkonzo Vanuna Ingwe heading south in the Moati between Batalia and Mamba Road. Last tracks cut slightly more east out of the Moati, about halfway between the junction of those two roads.
So you can just get that picture again with that update.
Tracks, male leopard, in the Mawati between Mamba and Batalia. Last track's cut sort of southeast, about halfway between the junction of those two roads. I'm going to do Batalia around to Drakensberg and then Mamba.
Okay, copy that.
I wonder who it could be. Copy, thanks. So it could be one of two male leopards. There's been a bit of shift in male leopard territory since I arrived here. And when I first arrived, Mvula was the undisputed king of Juma in terms of leopards, and we used to see him quite regularly all over the place. And then a new male leopard arrived to the west of Arathusa called the Anderson male, which forced Tingana, who is traditionally the dominant male around Arathusa, to be pushed further to the east. And in doing so, he's pushed Mvula, and now we're starting to see Tingana sort of way deep, even further than he had before. Before this dry riverbed there, the Mawati was sort of their boundary, but now we're finding Tingana as far, very close to the Buffalo's Hook boundary. So he's almost in control of the whole of Juma now. We do see Mvula from time to time, but not nearly as frequently as we used to. I mean, Tingana walked past Buffalo's Hook Dam the other day, which is so very deep in Mvula's territory. But Mvula is getting quite old now. If I remember correctly, he's 11 or 12, which for a male leopard is getting towards the end of his tenure at the top of his game. From this age going on a bit, he's probably still got another good year or so of mating with females and still controlling a decent sized territory. So once he gets to sort of 13, it's very old for a male leopard, and they will become semi-nomadic then, and moving around on the edge of the territories, trying to avoid any other male leopards. So once you get old as a male leopard, it's not a very good view, and unfortunately most of those animals die a very violent death. Debbie in Vancouver, talking about leopards and leopard tracks, would like to know if Quarantine's tracks aren't possibly the same size as Tingana's at the moment. I would say probably not just yet, Debbie. I think they're still a bit smaller. Also, Tingana's got quite a lot more weight behind them, so that in that soft sand, the tracks will sink heavier. So I would say this is a big male, bigger than one of the Quarantine, or either Quarantine or Prenuma. I'm going to go check Drakensberg Road very carefully now, because if he is going to come out of this block, he's come from this direction, so he's more likely to have come out there. So I'm going to focus my attention on not missing any tracks, and while we do that, let's go see what James is up to.
There are very few things in this world that can cause Brent Leo Smith to actually focus his attention, like he said there. Tracking leopards, of course, is top of that list of three things. I shan't tell you what the other two are. So if anybody is going to find the leopard, Brent Leo Smith is that person with his large size 12s. Surprisingly dainty when walking through the bush. So we've come towards sort of Treehouse Dam area. Now Brent, of course, was driving around here this morning looking for tracks of Karula, and he didn't find any coming out of this block. So I thought it might be worthwhile just driving through here to see if we can't pick up A, some tracks, or B, the leopard herself. That would be prize number one, of course. to do is go down to the dam. I know Brent has been down there already, but it still might be worth it.
Afternoon, Aubrey. Give me about 5-10 minutes.
Sorry, Pamela, the game drive radio exploded into life, so I missed your question. I will get it again. Right, Pamela, you want to know if buffalo ever migrate? No, they don't. Well, not strictly. So they don't migrate in the same way that wildebeest in the Serengeti do. In Botswana, they move quite far. In this area, they certainly used to move much further than they do before the advent of pumped water. And I can't tell you enough about how much pumping water into artificially made dams and pans has A, modified the movement of animals, and B, modified the ecology and vegetation of the area here. So, no, in this area they don't migrate. Certainly their home ranges are probably smaller than they used to be, but they will travel quite extensively within the specific home range area that they live in. In a place like Botswana, where it's a much more open system, they'll move larger distances, and possibly in East Africa the same. There's a steenbok, Andrew. A little steenbok through here, which on the scale of things that I've managed to find in the last 2 days is pretty impressive. No, he's gone. Mine? I'll have to find another. Don't want to have to resort to tree climbing for entertainment again. Although, it's a lot of fun. Go and help Brent because we don't have much signal in that area, but I think we'll probably meander over. Once he gets the direction of where those tracks are going, we'll try and give him some help. This is also the area apparently where the injured impala was, and I believe you saw him today. I'm fascinated to know how he's getting on. With that kind of exploded eye. Love this question. Jenny, you're on Twitter and you want to know about domestication of buffalo. Have they ever been domesticated? The short answer is yes, sort of. The long answer is not really. So not commercially, no. Can they be domesticated? If you raise them from calves, they can be sort of domesticated, but once they get adult, they can be quite nasty. And it's one of the most fascinating things. They do in fact, even when they're raising buffalo for sort of breeding programs, they tend to use Jersey cattle as surrogate mothers because the milk is very rich in cream and it does help the buffalo to grow much faster than their own milk. And they obviously, surrogate Jersey mothers are a lot more easy to deal with than are the fairly aggressive buffalo mothers. And one of the consequences of that, of course, is that there has been hardly any, if any, domestication of animals in Africa. So where you had the auroch, which was the precursor to the modern-day cattle, it was an animal that evolved in Asia, I think, and was certainly found in the Middle East when human beings went there. And by the time they got there, it had lost all fear of people, and so it was easy to domesticate. A buffalo, however, evolved with human beings in Africa, and because of that, shows a disturbing propensity to homicide, which means it will try and kill people because it feels very threatened by us. And so trying to domesticate a buffalo is a dangerous thing indeed. So the long answer to it is no, they haven't really been domesticated, and the same goes for zebra and warthogs. Here is Treehouse Dam. utterly as barren as the Sahara Desert after a prolonged drought. Yes, fascinating that, isn't it, Andrew? It does make one think of dryness, though. Now, the elephants have dug that hole, which I'm sure Brent told you a little bit earlier. I was hoping that there might be something coming down to drink from that little puddle. But alas and alack. You can see also, sorry, Andrew, you can see this kind of hazy grey cloud that's been building every single afternoon. And then it just dissipates as the evening comes. And it looks very beautiful, but doesn't deliver anything particularly profound by way of precipitation. Very nice. Very subtle use of the ND filter there, Andrew. Well done. Right, we're going to head back down towards vaguely the Milwati, where Brent is tracking. Let's see what we can find there. Foot and mouth disease, and apparently humans don't get the same disease animals do, and you say it's a viral disease, and the one in humans is not related to the one that is in animals. Good, thank you very much for that, Angie. It's very useful information which I shall attempt to retain. Never had a particularly good memory, unfortunately. See here, Andrew, other than broken trees and dust. Where Brent is finding all these butterflies. Might have to eat something, I think, Andrew. Might have to find an interesting thing to eat. Let's see if it affects you. Gently away from us. Oh, and a warthog. Little warthog going across the road. There he goes. Doing roughly Mach 3. I don't know why the warthog was so nervous of us here. I'm pretty sure he was sitting in this termite mound. We'll just get a little bit past. See if we can't find a burrow there. Probably not see it. It's through the trees there, but there's a hole in that termite mound, out of which I think that little warthog exploded. It's obviously feeling quite threatened. Anyway, pity he didn't stand still. He was quite an impressive ball. Let's try and see through there. With the super zoom that we have on this camera, basically be at Skukuza, and you can still get a pretty good picture of him. Now, Kit, you are 10 and you're in the middle of your science lesson, and you want to know why on earth it is hot here. Sorry about that. Kit, you're in the middle of your science class. Sorry, Brent Smith is now shouting in my ear. You want to know, Kit, why it is that, first of all, that it's night time where you are, and almost nighttime and it's daytime here, and why it's cold where you are, and why it's hot here. Kit, you don't have a torch, do you, Andrew?
Battery dead.
Battery dead? No, I've got one on my phone. Okay, never mind. Right, Kit, I will now attempt to explain this to you. This will be my second attempt at doing this, but I will try and do it for you. And for all the other kids living in the northern hemisphere, and perhaps some of the adults who are wondering the same thing. We have had a question from an adult once, which went something along the lines of, this wasn't on SafariLIVE, I was on Safari. A guest said, it's October back home, what month is it here? And that, of course, was difficult to answer with a straight face. Right, there's a good piece of elephant dung there. Right, Kit, stand by. Now, Kit, this is a rough approximation of the Earth, okay? I'm now going to make a rough approximation of the Sun. There is the Sun, everybody. Now, as we all know, the Earth travels around the Sun like that, right? Yes, Andrew, you know that, of course. Now, the first question you've asked, Kit, is why is it nighttime where you are and daytime where we are? Now, in fact, I know what we're going to do, rather than use this, let's put this bright light on here. Right, morning time, sorry, well, yeah, so it's a different time of the day where you are. Now remember, let's pretend that this is the Sun and this is the Earth. Look at this piece of dung as the Earth as it spins. Now, Kit, you're just coming into, I think you're in America, aren't you? Which means that you are behind us, so it's morning time where you are. So, as the Sun spins around, so it becomes light on the side of the ball where the Sun is shining. So you're sitting over here right now, and we're sitting on this side. And as the Earth turns like this, so where we are will become dark, and where you are will become light. Right? Does that make sense to you? I should probably have a fawn or two. So that's where we live. That's us there. And you live over here. Okay. America, South Africa. Now, why it's hot where we are and cold where you are is that the Earth tilts at that angle. Can you see how it's tilted there? It's not straight. It's tilted. Okay? Now, remember the Earth is also moving around the Sun like that. So when it's this side, you can see that the northern hemisphere where you are, and this is not this time of the year, this is in June. The northern hemisphere where you are is closer to the Sun than the southern hemisphere. See that? The northern hemisphere is closer than the southern hemisphere. That's where we are. So that's why it's winter here when it's summer here. Now, when it comes around the other side of the Sun, 6 months later, now we're in December time, and now, see, the Earth is still turning. Now suddenly the southern hemisphere is closer to the Sun. There we go. Closer to the Sun than the northern hemisphere. And you're in the northern hemisphere, so you're in winter, and we're in summer in December. So that, Kit, is basically how it works. I hope that makes some form of sense to you. If it doesn't, I shall, well, perhaps ask your mother. She might be able to give you a slightly better explanation. Right, on we go. Try and find some animals. That was a much better sun than my phone. And the car started. driving here, of course, Brent Leo Smith is out on foot. And Mike in Montana, you want to know, when I get out of the vehicle, am I not afraid that a predator will come and get me? No. In short, the short answer to that is no. And of course, Brent Leo Smith is now actively looking for a predator on foot. And so we wouldn't do that if we thought that they were going to come and eat us. Remember, the predators out here, Mike, although they see most of the herbivores out here as something to eat, they see us as a predator. What is that bird shouting at? It's a rattling testicular on the top of that tree. Beautiful rattling testicular shouting there. There's a snake or something in here that it's very cross about. That's an alarm call. Very angry alarm call. Might be worth just sneaking in there to have a quick look and see what there is there. Just going to ease my way in here. So while we're doing that, Mike, remember the animals out here see us as predators. So that's not to say that there's no danger at all, but as long as you're careful. And so before I get out of the car, I'll always have a look around and just see that there isn't anything around, and then I'll climb out the car, and then I'm not worried at all, no. What's the thorns there, Andrew? Wants to tell you what's going on with his tracking expedition. Let's head across to him, and I'm just going to have a quick turn through here, and I'll see you shortly.
So good news is we're still on those tracks. They crossed over the next road and headed into this myriad of little drainage lines and dry riverbeds off Leadwood Road. So now I'm just really carefully checking Leadwood Road, trying to make sure it hasn't snuck across here. If not, there's a very strong possibility that that animal is somewhere in this nice, cool thickets along this drainage line. So we're going to check Leadwood, and then I'm going to come back down here if we don't find anything, and take a stroll through the bush, hopefully be able to pull a leopard out of the bush by its tail. While we continue to do this and check the road very carefully, we're going to hand you back to the commander, and he's going to entertain you while hopefully we try to find you a leopard.
Right, we're just driving through here. The testicular into this, they've kind of gone back to where they were. I'm going to keep looking through here. Maybe we will find a leopard lying on the ground. Maybe we will find nothing. Now they'll do that. They'll do that alarm calling for big predators like leopards. They'd do it for lions. They would do it for snakes. They would do it for avian predators like eagles. But it's unlikely they'd be sitting on the top of the tree. This is a dead bronc we're going to go over. It's going to make a... Lock your ears, everyone. Oh, I can't see anything in here. Andrew, can you? No leopard? No black mamba? No. All right, let's make our way here. Turn to our... Right, watch your heads, everyone. We're going to have to go under here. Thorns on the right, at least left, nothing on the right. Okay, you right there? Is that too fast for you? Yeah. There we go. There we go. strength shock absorbers that most tanks have. These are not deeply comfortable. Right, not sure what they were shouting at. On we go. Clarissa, very excellent question. You're in Arlington and you want to know, is it possible if the animals that are alarm calling, is it possible that they would be alarm calling at us? Clarissa, yes, that is possible. Mainly when we're on foot, not so much in the vehicle. That one started calling long before we got anywhere near it though, so I don't think it was calling at us. They don't generally tend to alarm calls at the vehicles, and certainly Impala will look at you if you're walking. If you try and hide from them, then they might alarm call. But if they're just watching you go, then they don't alarm call like they would if they saw a leopard walking along. Nice question, thank you. All the way from Arlington. Otherwise, a fairly mammal-free zone. It's so funny, you know. They're either we have all the elephants or we have none of the elephants. 2 days ago, you couldn't go around a corner without bashing into a herd of elephants. Now, nothing. Just buffalo and Hyena. Okay, let us continue up towards. I think we'll probably head towards the dam now. See what we can see there. It's a beautiful bird there that we don't often see. The chagra has gone into that Sisyphus there, Andrew. It's there. You would have seen it move. Let me sneak forward.
So even though we're looking for leopard, we're definitely not adverse to showing you the rest of the creatures out here in the African bush. And here we have a female warthog and 2 little piglets. Difficult to say whether 2 were born. I'd say probably a few more than 2 were born, but only 2 survived so far. They are a great favorite of leopards, little warthog piglets. So cute. You can already see the little pads developing on their knees from kneeling down to feed. And there we go, perfect example. So the reason warthogs do that is so they can get right down to the grass. They quite often will try to get under the grass to remove the little tubers that are attached to the grass that are holding a bit of nutrients and moisture. Mom is actually so close to us we can hear her feeding. You can see very nicely there, you've got those top set of tusks that are more for show. And then underneath you've got those small bottom tushes. And those are the ones that do the damage. Those are incredibly razor sharp. They rub against the bottom of those top tusks. And when you see wounds on lions and leopards that look like clear slices, quite often they come from the bottom tusks of a warthog. There we go, you can see that quite nicely there now. You can see how sharp they are, like little daggers. And she's very close to us, probably 7 or 8 feet. As you can see, one of our aerials is in between us and her at the moment. And the little ones are not too much further than her and following her towards the vehicle a little bit. And you can see the one on the left's a little male. You can see those tiny 2 little warts already. Males have 2 warts on the side of their face. and females have 1. Let's have a look. And that one is a little girl. No, it was a little boy. But we're going to sit here with these warthogs a little bit, but we're going to cross across to James quickly, who's got a duiker.
There's a duiker there, everybody, and it does not look good. Skinny, and you won't see it now, but we were just watching it. I mean, a massive, massive agglomeration of ticks underneath her right front shoulder. I don't know what's wrong with her. You can sort of see it there. That's very sad. I don't know if that's got anything to do with the drought. I don't think so. I think it would affect everybody uniformly. But that really doesn't look very good at all. And of course, as soon as a drought like this comes or falls, what happens is that the animals come under nutritional stress. And that nutritional stress, if there is kind of a high parasite load in an animal, or, you know, it's got some kind of infection that it's trying to fight off, as we all know, if you have to eat well, if you're feeling sick, you've got to get as many vitamins and minerals into your body to help fight off the disease. Now, on at times like this, when it's really pretty dire in terms of stuff to eat, you'll probably find that those infections and things are taking hold, and so the weaker animals are going to suffer the most. Let's head back to Brent. He's got his warthog still.
So, still continuing our little break from leopard tracking to follow these tiny little bundles of joy. And as it starts to get cooler, Mom's going to start leading them back towards their den, which will be a disused aardvark burrow. And they will spend the night in there as a bit of protection for predators. Lynn in Ontario, Canada would like to know whether warthog tusks are made up of the same stuff as elephant tusks. Well, Lynn, to a degree, yes, it's enamel like our teeth, and a very similar makeup. Elephant the ivory is much, much finer, and that's why it's so sought after, and obviously bigger, so you're able to work it into carvings, which is the main use for ivory. But warthog is very similar, but not quite the same. It's a little bit more coarse and not as easy to work with. So Charlotte is wondering whether warthogs and bush pigs are the same thing. They most definitely are not. Here we have a warthog in front of us. Bush pig is a pig, but it is a slightly different type of pig. It's a Potamocerus porcus, if I remember correctly. Let me just... As the warthogs, they're disappearing off to go get home. Charlotte, I'll show you a picture of a bush pig in a couple of seconds. There we go. So, bush pig, it's probably not the best diagram of a bush pig. Quite often they're a little bit more red than that. You can see they're quite a lot bigger than a warthog. A male can weigh as much as 130 kgs in exceptional cases, but normally around 80, 90 kilograms. They are nocturnal, so they are more often seen at night, was foraging, where there's a warthog obviously are diurnal. They also occur in much bigger sounders. You get quite big groups of them, sometimes like 15 or 16 in a sounder, and they are slightly less well spread. They prefer more wetter areas, so they stick to the east coast of South Africa. They don't go up into the central and southern regions. It's dry. You can see they stick all to the more wet areas of South Africa and Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Botswana, avoiding the arid northwest. And they're a slightly different family. Obviously, they probably have a similar ancestor many million years ago, but they have been very different from warthogs for quite a long time. And there's of course the warties we've just seen. Okay, let's carry on. We're going to continue now back down to where I think that leopard might be. We had no tracks coming across Nedwood Road, so I'm going to go for a walk in the bush. Wasn't that great to see? That's one of the best little piglet sightings I've had since I've been here, and they are very, very cute. Believe it or not, I've had a few of those as pets in my younger years, and I can guarantee you, like all wild animals, they don't make very good pets. Listen to the radio for a second. Quite a big cloud bank up to the right. Probably a big storm behind it, so you can see the sun disappearing. Quite nice, giving us a pleasant little break from very warm weather. In Arkansas, says occasionally on the road, it looks like sometimes it's torn up and she'd like to know what it's from. Normally it's from Ellie's. We can see there's some old Ellie tracks on the road at the moment. So normally it is Ellie's that have done that, but occasionally buffalo or other animals. Sometimes it's wildebeest and zebra that have used the road to roll on. The Zimbo living in London issued me a challenge for my leave. Andrew, Francis and myself are going to Zimbabwe, where Karen is from. We're going to Lake Kariba to visit Andrew's parents. We have a house there, and we are going to do some tiger fishing. And Karen, if I remember correctly, said her biggest tiger was 9 pounds in Lake Kariba and challenged me to beat that. And I said, unfortunately, Karen, because she missed the show this morning, I beat that in Kariba a few years ago. My biggest tiger in Kariba is probably close on 15, 16 pounds. But I will accept the challenge for this little trip we're going on now. And speaking about tigers, the largest tiger fish I have ever caught is in southern Tanzania. And that was 13 kilograms, so well over 20 pounds, 24, 25 pounds. So I've had very good tiger fishing over the years all over Africa. I even worked as a fly fishing guide for a short while. And very bad news. That's what I wasn't hoping. Those leopard tracks we've been following, I knew that bottom end of Leadwood's very hard, and sometimes we miss the tracks. And so I was checking the main access road, and there we go. Here come the tracks out. Oh dear. So we're going to continue on. I think let's go have a look at the grey-headed kingfisher nest. See, I just want to check. No, this is very interesting. Now we've got female tracks here, just to throw me in. This looks like Karula's footprints. The male tracks going out, Karula's footprints coming in by the looks of things. There we go. And she's walked through here. So, on a main road, so it looks a little bit older than it is, but if I look at the track that's a bit further away, I can see it's a little bit sharper. So the reason that these tracks don't look as good is probably because of the dust of all the cars. As soon as you move a little bit further off, too close, we've got nice sharp tracks, and these look like they could be from the day, during the day today. And there were definitely no tracks on the top end of Leadwood. So it is possible she's still around here. Let's go check the old hyena den. It's not too far from us. Oh, isn't that lucky? One leopard leaves, another one comes in. Let's hope Tebs's leopard spotting skills are still on fine form at the moment. Stations Nkonzo of that Wanunenwe cross south over Gowrie Main, just to the west of Chilakatlan, but there's one Sati tracks coming in from the south. I'm going to follow up. So there's an old hyena den here that is currently being used by warthogs. And it's the next sort of good spot to have a look for tracks. Let's check carefully around here. Have a quick look through here. If we get no luck, we'll go back to James, and I'm going to go take a walk on those tracks. So there is some nice deep drainages here that you could have been resting up in during the heat. Fresh enough that I'm going to say, let's go back to Commander Bond, and I'm going to go use Shank's pony to see if I can find a leopard.
Everybody, just look over there. We've got a European roller. And this is, of course, one of the more unusual roller species because it doesn't live here. It lives in Europe. It's just visiting for the summer. And I've always thought a wonderful way to live, if you can be a swallow or a roller and live in permanent summer. And that's what that roller does. And the difference between that, of course, and the lilac-breasted roller is the plain, very pale, almost dull blue color that the purple, at least that the European roller has down the whole of his front. See, there's no lilac or purple at all, just that plain, or this plain sort of sky pale blue with brown on the wings. But unmistakably a roller. And they're almost completely silent here because they don't breed here. As far as I remember, they don't breed here. Let me just check that before I tell you a lie. They don't breed here. They breed in Europe. So unlike their beautiful cousins, the lilac-breasted rollers, and their purple rollers, which make a big that bird, and almost all birds that come here just to summer and don't breed here, they're almost completely silent when they're here. So they only call when they go back home to where they breed, when they're trying to sing to attract ladies, or to mark a territory where they'd like to set up a kind of family or a nest. That's what makes them sing. Something just went herring across the road. Onto this termite mound. Kit, apparently you took the attempted lesson that I gave you on the seasons to your mother, told her about it, and she seems to have understood. So that's brilliant. Well done. I'm glad that I could hopefully make you understand, and you in turn have then helped your mother to understand, because that's the best way to learn. To teach is the best way to learn. There's a whole herd of impalas through there, and let's just stop and have a look at them. One must have at least one obligatory impala stop per day, because they need to be appreciated. Andrew, that's the side of the car we're looking at. That's not the impala. There we go. The little one there, just a week or two old, and already walking, running, swinging its tail from side to side to flick off the ticks. It is just astonishing after a week or 2 weeks that impala could probably just about almost survive on its own. Not quite, it does need to suckle for a little bit longer, but not long, just a few weeks, and then it will be fine on its own, eating grass. As a human being, of course, as I've said before, during the Stone Age, used to leave home aged 14, which is still quite late, and during the modern era, of course, leaves home between 35 and 40 normally. In Hawaii, I'm not sure how to take this. You say that I sound like a teacher. Andrew, would you take that as a compliment or a sort of admonition? You take it as a compliment. Okay, thank you. Lilani, I'll take it as a compliment if Andrew does. I'm not sure that that's necessarily a good benchmark, but we'll take it there. And Lilani, you say, is there any question that I've never been able to answer? There are plenty. I get asked questions on the show all the time that I can't answer, but I say I don't know in such a way that probably sounds authoritative. I say, I just don't know about that. So maybe it sounds like no one knows, when in fact they do. Ooh, look. Can you see it, Andrew? Am I okay here, or should I go back? There's a woodland kingfisher right here, just a few meters from the car. Back. Look at that color. Flies away. Like a little F-16. I always imagined them like little fighter jets. Again, same height, just there. I'm going to sneak forward for this one. Oh, I hit a tree. There we go. Don't fly, bird. Be stuck. Look at that. That's the best view of a woodland kingfisher you'll ever get. that's stunning. Notice the black underbeak, bright red upper beak, the kind of bandit's mask around the eyes, and then, of course, that halcyon blue color, beautiful turquoise, which reminds you of a kind of Mozambican sea, a calm Mozambican sea on a summer's day. I love the way they lift their heads like that. It's just to check direction. I think they just in the same way that an owl will do it. And just move their heads to make sure that they're picking up the direction of the sound. You may have heard that la sound, but not too far from the hyena den. Maybe it's worth going to have a look. I wasn't going to, but it might be worth going to have a look. Look at the sharpness of that little beak. Isn't he lovely? And of course the woodland kingfisher is not a fish-eating kingfisher at all. It is an insect-eating kingfisher. Andrew, there's a stick behind there that is, if you just pull the focus, you'll get it. There was an ant walking up the side of that stick I saw. That one you had at the back there, that horizontal sort of there, that one, yeah. I just watched an ant walk up the side of it. Every little branch, every little leaf, every little plant, every little termite mound is an ecosystem to itself. Every little piece of elephant dung. And all obviously part of a much greater ecosystem. And the woodland kingfisher is a migratory bird, and they go up into equatorial Africa for the summertime. What a beautiful, beautiful sighting. Tree hole nesting bird, and they do breed here. And Scott Dyson actually made a nest, hoping one of these things would go and breed in it. But nothing's gone into his nest yet. I feel very sorry for him, actually, because if anybody deserves to have a nest, a bird in his homemade nest, it's Scott. He's found so many nests this summer, and I hope that one of the woodland kingfishers will go in there and lay some eggs and make some chicks in there. Lilac-breasted roller earlier, also very blue, but slightly less bright blue than that. And Sarah in New York, you want to know if it's true that it doesn't have the same tail streamers as a lilac-breasted roller? I don't know, Sarah. Let's have a look. Look in the book. I think by now I could find these birds in this book at will. No, it is not true. Sorry, it is true. I was looking at a racket-tailed roller. So there's the lilac-breasted one, and the European below it, and it doesn't have the same tail streamers. There we go. Nor does the purple one. There you go, Sarah. Definitively answered by Mr. Ken Newman, the late. Andrew, should you vote for Buffelshoek Dam or the hyenas?
Hyena den.
Right. Poor hyenas are going to be so sick and tired of me by the end of the year. Thankfully, that's only 2 days away. My logic is, you know, that we won't always have the hyena den. So we must spend as much time there as we can. Mercedes here, and I think a lot of domestic animal owners will have similar queries. You all know, you take your domestic animal out for a walk, and especially if you don't happen to live in a large city, you're definitely going to find that they pick up parasites, they'll pick up fleas, they'll pick up ticks, and then you have to take them to the vet or pull the ticks off them, and that sort of thing, and you've got to they don't get infected by parasites. Mercedes, out here, the animals are used to it. They are, they are so often attacked by parasites and by ticks and that sort of thing that they build up a general immunity. It's exactly the same as a human being that has never had medical attention or that's grown up in the bush. And I used to say this in all seriousness, like Brent Smith, for example, grew up in Botswana and in the bush, and I think his immune system is very strong. That was a kudu running across, compared with somebody who's grown up basically in the oxygen tent environment of a city where you don't get exposed to the bacteria and diseases and parasites, and therefore you don't get any natural immunity to them. Now, I think it's exactly the same thing out here. Most of the animals will be carrying a parasite load. Their bodies are in constant struggle against those parasites, but because they are used to them in the area, they will get rid of them. Great question. Thank you, Mercedes. So the hyenas were just making a bit of a noise. We were just over there, and the hyena den is just here. Go and see what's going on there. The afternoon is turning very nice and cool now. 32 degrees has probably dropped down to about 29, which is just under, it's about 83 degrees Fahrenheit. Very pleasant indeed. It's a perfect temperature. A blessing. Every day we get out of bed thinking, oh, is this going to be another viciously hot one? It hasn't been that hot for the last few days, which is great. It would be greater if there was a whole lot of rain, of course. Right, here we are. We are arriving. On YouTube, you agree with me, you say it's always worth checking the den. You love the hyenas, I do too. Well, there we have 1 cub, 3 cubs. Let's just watch where they go. Don't go into the hole. That's it. Good stuff. Wonderful. Just ease our way in. Everyone's out at the moment. Hi guys. There's Pretty and Corky and D1 and D2. November has just gone inside. Fairly foul odor is hanging in the air over here. It smells a bit ripe, don't you think, Andrew? Mm. Beautiful. I could sit here all day. There we have Corky, who's quite dominant, and her 2 cubs are feeding, suckling. And there's November. She's up at the top there, and she's just behind the tree. I don't know if you can get her. She's just behind that tree there. You can hear the little ones calling. Seems to be the general sort of feeding time, and then before bedtime play. Lovely stuff. May is there. Not May, November.
Thanks very much. So we have the decoration. How much is 100 euros?
No, I might try and sneak a little forward. There she is. Just sticking her head out now. There she is. Hi. Going down to see her mum? That's not her mum. Her mum's the one behind there. That's just a friend, family friend. Just chewing off the ear of the friend there.
I think there's no changes except in the area for somewhere in this area.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think let's sit here for a little while and then we might go around that side and see if we can't get a good view of November and her mum, because what November does, of course, is that she's a lot shyer when Corky and D1 and D2 are about the place. But now you can see she's the other side of the mound and seems to be a lot more confident.
Yeah, here come out. Okay, put it up.
Hello, Ian. You're a new viewer, and you're asking the question, how long possibly can this magnificence of live safari in the wilderness of the Kruger National go on for? Ian, good news. 365 days a year for the foreseeable future, we'll be doing something similar to this. Isn't that great? Hopefully on an expanded piece of land at some stage. We'll probably have more. We're on a skeleton crew at the moment, Ian, so often we've got a walk out. Sometimes we have a drone out as well. So just keep watching. Especially if you happen to work in an office. This is an ideal thing to keep you entertained while the minutiae of office work dulls your senses. So Deborah in Ohio, I mean, you want to know where this den is and who's denning here. Everyone's denning here at the moment in our Djuma clan, Deborah, and it's a northwestern corner, or not corner, but northwestern section of Djuma, and it's on a road called Gallagher Shortcut. So Deborah, I don't know if you know the roads here or not, but that's where it is, northwest sort of section of Djuma. And there are a couple of other dens around the place that this clan uses, but this is the only active one that we know of at the moment. I did see a very pregnant-looking hyena the other day, come to think of it, so it might be worth going to check some of the other dens, because often what they do is give birth in a sort of peripheral den and then come back to the main den. There's little November. Betty, you're in Ontario, and it's a very valid question. Of course, you've obviously watched before, and you've seen the hyenas coming close to the vehicle, and you want to know if they're a threat to human beings. You say sometimes they come up to the vehicle and it looks like they want us to pet them. Betty, they definitely don't want us to pet them. If you touched a hyena, those powerful jaws would clamp around whatever you tried to touch them with astonishing speed, and you would lose whatever they're clamped about because they're very powerful jaws. But Betty, they're not really a danger to human. They can be at night, if they see you at night, and especially if you're lying down. So there's some fairly gruesome stories of people being dragged out of tents at night because they leave the doors open. So a hyena will have no fear of you if you're lying down. It's perfectly safe to camp in an area like this if you've got a closed tent, but obviously it's very hot inside. And so inexperienced people have sometimes left the tent doors open, and then a hyena can be dangerous because they will come and drag you out. But during the day, if you're standing around them, no, they will normally, in fact, 99% of the time, they will run away. So, no, they're not a danger. I wouldn't describe them as a danger to human beings. I did have one experience earlier this year. The first time it's ever happened to me, when I was walking through the bush, and I spotted a hyena, and it started to sort of stalk me. It was just kind of being inquisitive, wanted to know what I was up to, and I actually had to shout at it to make it go away. But that's the only time that's ever happened, and I mean, I think it was more curious than it was being threatening. But what you can say is that if a hyena chose to push through some kind of an attack, you could be very sure that it would win. They're very strong, very powerful, very fast. But that's the same for any animal out here. You can see very nice contrast there between the fur on the back leg of the hyena, the adult, the spots, the obvious spotting, and the black fur on the little cubs. And then November, our older cub, she's now, well, I don't know where she is, I think she may have gone back up into the mound. She's now almost 8 weeks old, and she's got almost every day we see her, she's got another spot or two. Her coat is lightning. So from about 5 weeks, she started to lose that black coat. Andrew, was that a sigh, or do you wish to say something?
Just a sigh.
Just a sigh. And again, look at the dust. So much dust for this time of year. And hyenas, interestingly, are also not seasonal breeders. So, although they have so many little ones at the same time that the impala have got their little ones, that's just by chance. They might have a peak at this time of year, but certainly they're not generally known as seasonal breeders. Vanessa and Penny Pine, obviously you heard those hyenas making a loud noise, squealing noise. I want to know if they were fighting. No, I don't think they were. I think they were just being little baby animals, and they were being very, they wanted to eat and they wanted to feed, and so they were just squealing about getting some food, squealing at their mother far more than they were squealing at each other. So no, they've got beyond the stage. You know, even if they were going to engage in sibling rivalry, they've got beyond the stage where one will kill the other. Unless it's in sort of exceptional circumstances. And that, of course, I'm not sure, Penny and Vanessa, if you were referring or trying to sort of infer that there might be some kind of siblicide or sibling rivalry that could result in the death of one of the others. They're beyond that age now. And I think they're both males, so they won't fight. You can even see the fly crawling over the foot there. And B. Wilson, you're so right. You say that you enjoy looking at them, well, I do too, but that you're also learning so much about them just by spending time with them. That's exactly how we do learn about animals. We get these sort of basics from the books, and then we come and observe and see where the books are right and where the books are wrong, and then we try and interpret the behavior in new ways. And it's just so fascinating and such an opportunity to spend time with animals like this. Just wonderful stuff. And B, also, I mean, I think that Nobody ever comes to Africa and says, oh, I'd like to see some hyenas, please. They always come out here and they say, well, my worst is to hear people say, we want to see the big five, because that just means they've got a really terrible travel agent. But nobody ever, I think in sort of 5 years of full-time guiding, I don't think I ever had a guest come out and say, we'd like to see some hyenas, please. It's because they've got such a bad rap, and it's such an unfair rap. They're such wonderfully interesting, fascinating creatures. Now, Zoe, you ask a very nice question. Do they go off and form other packs or clans? Remember, a hyena grouping is called a clan when they grow up, or do they stay in the clan? Zoe, normally females will stay in the natal clan, so the females will stay within the clan. They can go and form others if the clan gets very big, but then the related females will go off together. And put that foot there. But the males, Zoe, are faced with an interesting choice. High-ranking males, even high-ranking males within a clan like this, stand very little chance of mating within their natal clan. So if you're born to the matriarch and you happen to be a male, you're high-ranking, you will dominate, you'll dominate other males at kills, and you'll get enough to eat, and you'll have a cushy, comfortable life. But the chances of you mating within the clan are about 3%. However, if you leave the clan as a male and go off to another clan, you sacrifice your dominance, you sacrifice your rank completely. You'll go in right at the bottom of the barrel, as it were, but you will have a 97% of hyenas are born to males that have come from somewhere else, to immigrant males. So therefore, they're males that are very low ranking. So you're faced with a choice as a male. You can live a cushy life at home, or you can go away and live a tough life, but have the chance to leave a genetic legacy. It's quite an interesting choice that hyenas are faced with. Completely unlike any other mammal I know. You can see the sort of, not scarring yet, but certainly the rubbing off of the fur on the face of the little ones there. And I think that's a result of digging and playing and possibly the old sort of scuffle that they've had between each other. And remember, we can tell the difference between these two. One of them, D1, has a left back foot with a little white patch. There it is. Whether that will be maintained into adulthood, I'm not sure. But that is D1, who's just gone down into the hole. D2 is still drinking. Now, Remy in San Diego, a very interesting question, and I was just about to say, as D1 disappeared down into the hole, I was just going to say I think she looks a little bit smaller, or he looks a bit smaller than his brother or sister, and I do think that D1 is slightly littler and maybe slightly less well-fed, and you can certainly see how D2 there is in a prime position, wasn't having to lie under her mother's heavy thigh. Well, he wasn't having to lie under his mother's heavy thigh. Maybe, therefore, Remy, that one that is suckling, D2, is actually a female. Maybe she's a female, and she's just dominating this little male that we're looking at now, and you can see his face is almost hair-free. He looks a bit like his mother in that regard. Hello, Gracie, aged 8 in Ohio. You want to know if other hyena mummies will bring their babies here when they have them? Yes, Gracie, they will do that. It's exactly what they do. So, like I said, I saw a pregnant hyena just the other day, and she will probably give birth at another den, but when the babies are about 2 weeks old, she might well bring them here so that they can play with these other little ones here. And their playing and their friends are very important to help them grow up. Just like with humans, it's very important to have friends. So it is with hyenas. Not so, Andrew?
Correct.
Yes. Nice question, Gracie. This is definitely very... You can see when she breathes out there, the dust sort of explodes up into the sky. There's little D1 looking a bit morose. Nothing to eat there. Hopefully you will be okay. So Jerry's just pointing out to me, and it's quite interesting, is that the pads of the foot there are overlapping, and you do notice that actually in the tracks. The tracks, obviously, they're not overlapping in the tracks, but they're very squashed together, those pads. And in a cat, they're much more exploded. They're very distinct and very far apart. So if you've got a house cat with you at this stage, grab it quickly by the scruff of the neck, flip it over, and make it show you its feet. And you will see that the pads on the house cat are far more exploded. They're much further apart than the pads on the hyena, or even on your domestic dog. Not as much as on the cat, but certainly far less sort of compacted and squashed together than the hyena's ones. So go and get your domestic animals and have a look, everybody, and tell me if I'm wrong. So I mean, dogs probably relatively similar to the hyena, but not quite as much, and cats nothing like. And if you happen to have a pet hyena at home, well, you know, you can check that too. And you shouldn't have a pet hyena at home, by the way. Especially if you live in New York or somewhere like that. Judy, very nice question. Now, you probably don't have any idea how tall these are because the camera's so close to them. You want to know how do they compare with a German Shepherd or an Alsatian? Judy, they're much bigger. A big female weighs 70 kilograms, which is about 160 to 170 pounds. So substantially larger than a German Shepherd. I think a German Shepherd would probably weigh about 40 kilograms, if I'm not wrong. So about 100 pounds. So, I mean, yeah, quite a lot bigger. Maybe an enormous German Shepherd might weigh 50 kilograms or 110 pounds. The males weigh about 50 kilos. So they're substantially smaller than the females, 50 to 60 kilos. Nice question. So, and they stand, I mean, if you were to see me standing next to one, it wouldn't look like it was that big. But if you were to see one standing next to an Alsatian or a German Shepherd, yeah, you would. I mean, there's no comparison really. They're much larger. A brown hyena, I suppose, would be roughly the same size, if I'm not mistaken. Let's head across to Brent Leo Smith, see if he's managed to find the leopard. I'm sure I don't think he has, because I think we would have gone across a lot faster than we have now. But let's get an update on the tracks that he's following. He is following in what is a very thick and difficult block. So let's head across to him, get an update, and I'll try and reposition around the other side and see what we can see there.
So as the sun sets, our chances of finding a leopard on the move increase slightly. I followed those tracks deep into the block, and they were heading in a northerly direction. So we've been sitting around this area listening for alarm calls. We haven't heard any yet. So we've decided to do another quick little maneuver through here. Who knows, maybe she's on the move. So we started off following the tracks of a male leopard that unfortunately crossed south out of our traverse area. But not even 5 meters further down, a female leopard's tracks crossed in. It looks like the tracks of Karula, just judging from the size and the area we found them. And quite a stunning sky up ahead. Stop, let you have a look at it now through a nice dead leadwood. There you go, isn't that a picturesque little scene? The sun setting framed by 2 dead leadwood trees. And always good to stop, listen for a little bit. Hopefully to hear that loud bark of a kudu alarm calling. A very beautiful sunset safari. Welcome to Raina from Texas. So since we're out so often at dusk and dawn, are mosquitoes a problem? And if so, mosquitoes, what about malaria? Well, Raina, not too much of a problem with mosquitoes at the moment while we're driving. When we're moving, they're not such a problem, but one must also remember, due to the drought this year, the mosquitoes are nearly non-existent due to the lack of water for them to breed in. But also, this is from a malaria point of view, this is a very low-risk malaria area. Very, very few cases from this area here. From the low part of South Africa, I've only had malaria once, and that's when I was a kid. But far worse malaria areas in Africa, and I've lived in most of them, and I'm still standing. I've had malaria 29 times. But just to let you know about malaria, my dad's got a very, very, very good saying about malaria. Malaria is not serious if you treat it seriously. So what I mean by that is, if you start feeling symptoms, etc., you immediately, I carry finger prick tests, and I carry 2 full courses of coartem, which is the best medicine for malaria, with me at all times. Because quite often, for example, I travel quite a lot. So even when I go to the United States or the United Kingdom, I will carry malaria kits and medicine with me. Because quite often the doctors in those areas won't have a clue about malaria, and they'll tell you you've got a cold or a flu or whatnot, and that's when malaria becomes serious. It's when it's left untreated. If you pick it up early, within the first couple of days of symptoms showing, with the new medicine, you'll be sick for 2 or 3 days. I mean, sometimes even less. I've even managed to take game drives and run safaris while suffering through a bout of malaria. And Jerry in Final Control says that little bit of advice is very much, sounds like a very dad bit of advice. She loves it. Excuse me. Welcome to Nigel on Twitter. He says, with all my experience elephants. I'm tracking elephants at the moment. I've just seen some fresh tracks that weren't here earlier, and we've driven this road today. Nigel was wondering, when is the best time to see animal migrations and where? Well, it all depends on the migration you're after, Nigel. And for me, if you want to see the Serengeti or Masai Mara migration at its absolute best, I would recommend sort of February in the Ndutu plains of Tanzania. That's when all the wildebeest give birth. So being on slightly different schedules to their breeding here. So they have 2 rainy seasons there. But on Ndutu in January, February, when all the baby wildebeest, baby Thompson's gazelles are around, baby Topi, it is an incredible time of the year to see not only the migration, but the predator interaction with the migration. So you do get to see a lot of kills. So that's that one. Interesting enough, chatting about migrations, and there's a lot of other migrations that people wouldn't think to go watch the whales off Southern Africa. This time of the year is a good time to be down in Hermanus or around the Cape to watch the humpbacked whale migration. Also, well, June, July, great time to see the humpback whales of Central Africa. And the largest mammalian migration, I think it could be in the world, but I know for sure in Africa, happens around in the Kasanka National Park in northern Zambia, where 4 million straw-colored fruit bats migrate from the Congo Basin rainforest to come take advantage of the fruiting figs at Kasanka in Zambia. Now, literally, there are so many bats, they blacken out of the sky. Incredible, incredible thing to see. Most of the main migrations in South Africa are non-existent anymore. You do have local migrations in and around zebra and wildebeest in this area. They do have local migrations between different watering and grazing. One of the largest migrations in the world used to be in South Africa. It was the springbok migration, and they used to migrate actually just north of Pretoria, and there would have been about estimated 6 million springbok in that migration, and one would think it was shooting them that wiped them out. It wasn't. It was actually the advent of farming and fences that stopped that migration through the northwestern areas of South Africa. My dad was lucky enough to meet someone who was actually alive during one of those, the last of the bigger ones. And what happened, the guys used to get stuck in their cars. There were so many springbok. They put those old models, I think probably a Model T Ford or whatnot, or even wagons. They would just literally be pushed along by this huge, massive springbok moving. Before it gets too dark, let's pop across to James and have a last view of those very cute hyena cubs before it gets a little too dark.
There's a little cub chewing on a piece of grass, which of course is a normal cub thing to do, as it is a normal thing to do if you have a domestic animal. Normally it's your chair leg though, or piece of the door frame in the case of one of the staffies we once had, resulting in the cold Johannesburg night air streaming in. No, the other one's gone back inside, so we're just going to sit here a few more minutes. We went round the other side to check we went to the other side to check the other side, obviously. And there was Pretty fast asleep, and she was fast asleep with May, and the little one November is still inside the mound. So we'll sit here for a few more minutes, and then we'll head out quickly. Well, not quickly, we'll gently make our way to quarantine just to check. I have a feeling that maybe those wild dogs will arrive there. No one found them this morning, so nobody knows really where they are. It's always worth just checking the clearings as the evening falls, in case they come out. Now, Millie in Cleveland, Ohio, made a sort of throwaway comment about hyenas with pets. And you say, have I ever heard of the hyena men of Nigeria or the hyena men of Harar? I think the Harar ones are in Ethiopia, if I'm not mistaken, unless I've got it mixed up. But there are... I always forget where the story exactly. The ones in Ethiopia, I think, Millie, are a sort of cult family of people that have sort of lived and feed hyenas off a rubbish dump, and they've done that for many, many years. I think that's the story in Ethiopia, and they've got a sort of almost cultish fascination with them, but it's only one family of people that feeds these hyenas, and it's on a kind of a big landfill site, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in Ethiopia. I'm not sure where exactly. I'm really irritated with myself that I don't remember this. And then in Nigeria, there's also a group of people who have hyenas, and I think it's more for kind of a, you've seen those pictures where it says Nigerian debt collector. They're not used for debt collection. I think they're more used as almost sort of circus animals where, people will take them around the place and show them to you and make them do tricks, and then you can pay them to do that. Not a very nice life for a hyena. I think that's the case. Millie, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, and I think that's in Lagos in Nigeria. So two sort of almost domesticated examples of hyenas. I think they would have been domesticated a lot more if it was an easy process. I don't think it's an easy process to domesticate a hyena. Now, is that D1 or D2, Andrew? Can you tell? Where's the little white sock? Now, Jennifer in Toronto, of course, you make a very good point. If you are watching at work, your colleagues might become slightly alarmed by the noises coming out of the speakers at your desk. The simple, of course, solution to that is headphones. But yes, absolutely. I just imagine, I've worked in an office for about 6 months, and that was only twice a week, and it nearly drove me stark raving insane. And I can just imagine some of those long meetings where people waffle on just for the sake of hearing their own voices. I imagine having this thing on an iPad where you're pretending to take notes would be a fascinating way to spend a boring boardroom meeting while some guy went through 60-page financial report. I mean, that's far more entertaining than a 60-page financial report, don't you think, Andrew?
Mm-hmm.
Lots of loose skin there. Now, Sharon in Pittsburgh, look at that little thing being licked very clean. That would probably take the skin off you or I. But the little one's loving it. Sharon in Pittsburgh, you say you look at the adult and you say very little fur. Is that from the dirt, or are they just not very furry? Are they? They get less and less furry the older they get, Sharon. Very short fur, and you can see Corky's got hardly any hair on her head at all, and also not much on the hindquarters. That's from fighting. It's from dirt. It's from wear and tear. They don't need a great deal of hair, of course. They don't need it to try and keep warm, unless it's deep in the winter. And I suspect it gets a bit thicker during the winter time. But at this time, certainly very thin. But the youngsters, the younger ones, and Andrew will just, before we go, he'll show you, oh, look at that, just not yet, a picture of May, who's got much longer fur. And you say they don't seem concerned with hygiene at all. No, they don't. And there's a reason, well, not a reason, there's a benefit of that, and that is that they have incredibly powerful constitutions. Many of the other cats will clean their faces after a kill to avoid the disease and bacteria that comes with having sort of rotting flesh in your fur. But hyenas don't seem to bother too much with that stuff at all. Now, round about this time yesterday, Corky got up and walked off, and the cubs went inside, and the rest went off with her. It's so sweet. Sarah, in New York, you've just told a story that's made my blood run cold. You were somewhere, I couldn't get where exactly, but you were lying on a daybed watching the stars, and a hyena licked your feet, and you shone your torch, and it ran off. Sarah, please don't do that again. I think you're quite lucky to still have both feet. Lovely adventure and story to tell, but could have ended very differently indeed. Where were you? I think you did say, I just didn't hear it exactly. At a place called Karangaia. I don't know where Karangaia is. Well, it sounds fascinating with the little thing now getting more and more. I think this is definitely a dominant one. Oh no, that's D2. At least D1, that's the one with a little bit of white. Look, getting a bit nervous now. Back to the den. Wants to follow Mum. So sweet. Thinking about going to see... Oh, look at this thing. Ah, thank you, Rod. I've just got it back. Karangaia apparently is in Tanzania, and it is, it's the 6th largest national park in Tanzania, and that's where you were, Sarah. Sarah, do not repeat that experience, please. I think you'll come back with 1 foot. Phew. Of course, a hyena would never have approached you like that if you'd been standing upright or during the day. It's a very adventurous little chap, this. Now, Bethany and Virginia, I've said that maybe these are 2 males, D1 and D2, and you want to know if they grow up together, will one of them be more dominant over the other, especially as they are, as sons of a dominant female, will they lead the clan? Males have no role in the leadership at all, Bethany. The males are smaller than the females, and they will have no leadership role. And they will share the rank. They'll probably share a very similar rank, these 2 males, if they do grow up in the clan. They could leave the clan, of course, and go and become very low-ranking males in another clan, but they will play no leadership role within this clan. And that's because they're males. And if they stay in the clan, yes, they'll be dominant in the male hierarchy, but almost the entire male hierarchy is dominated by all the females. Even the low-ranking females will often dominate some of the high-ranking males. Now, this is exactly what happened yesterday evening. Round about this time, just as it was starting to get dark, the hyenas decided it was time to go off and forage and find something to eat. Oh, shame. The little one doesn't want Mummy to go and doesn't want Auntie Pretty to go either. The only one left with them now is May. And I don't think she'll go anywhere. Well, she might. No, that's not May, is it, Andrew? She's too big. Or is it? Oh, that's not a year-old one. At least an 8-month-old. May is only 7 months old now. I mean, she would start to move with the clan now. Yeah, maybe that's what's going on here. Isn't that amazing? Exactly what they did last night, but they went down the other way. And they seem to be on a bit of a mission, either on a patrol or they know something about a bit of food. Except they'd be running if they thought there was food. A wonderful little scene. And off they go into the night and try and find something to eat. They'll either bring it back to the den or feed on it there and bring it back for the youngsters in the form of milk. And there's the little one watching. Don't worry, D1, they'll come back. And that's that. Isn't that fantastic? Let's just sit here for 1 minute, and we don't have much time left. We've only got about 6 minutes. But I think we're going to ease our way out of here because there doesn't seem to be much going on. Right, let's press slowly on out, and we'll just have a look on the road there and see if the hyenas are there. In fact, we won't, because I won't be able to start the car. No. We're going to have to link to Brent, I'm afraid. We can't start the car. See you shortly.
So unfortunately, no luck on that leopard, but don't worry, I'll be hot on its tracks on tomorrow's sunrise safari. And just having a quick check, you never know what appears around here, but there's such a fantastic sky. Big storm off to the southwest. Maybe it'll come this way. I don't think it will. So, the sun setting here. You can hear the rusty bedspring bird, or the coqui franklin. Oh, now he keeps quiet, of course. And then if we move off to the left, you can see there's a big cumulus storm that's already anviled. And the clouds are spreading, but it is quite far away. There we go, there's that big storm. But I think far too far from us to get any rain. But it is very, very peaceful. It's very, very still this evening. There's not a breath of wind, which has made it quite warm. So it's going to be a very, very, there's a term used in some movies for a warm night. I can't remember it now offhand. I think it was sultry, but in truth, it's sweaty. Balmy, not so much balmy. That was Jerry saying balmy, but I think it was used in some of those movies about how warm, hot nights are sort of sultry and supposed to be quite sexy. They're not. They're just sweaty. And if you live out here, you get to learn that very quickly. It's such a beautiful, beautiful evening. But from myself, we're going to say, from Tebs and myself, we're going to say good night, and we'll see you bright and early on the sunrise safari. James is going to follow those adult hyenas for as long as he can for the last few minutes of drive.
Right, we've come out onto the road, everybody, and there is Pretty. She's doing a bit of a turnaround now. There she goes. She's walked down the road, turned 180 degrees, and is now moving into the bush back towards the den. Straight along a path. Now this is classic kind of foraging behavior. There's nothing really obviously smelling in the air, so they're not rushing towards a kill. They're just looking about for anything that they might eat. She's a beautiful hyena, that she really is a very magnificent example of hyenadom. And as Jerry says, they don't need to forage. They can just come and steal the dustbin like they did last night. One of them broke in yesterday to our camp, dragged the dustbin out and destroyed it. I don't know what on earth they found to eat in there that was any deliciousness. And thankfully they didn't spread the muck too far, so it wasn't too hard to clean up. Magnificent set of chompers she's got there. Now, I know that many of you are still asking about that hyena that was injured last week, 2 weeks ago now, the one that had its foot broken and then its ear ripped off. I'm afraid, everybody, we haven't seen that hyena again. We don't know what happened to her, and I suspect quite strongly that she has shaken off this mortal coil and gone on to better things. Right, that's it from us this afternoon. Another fairly quiet drive, but lots of nice little things, and at least Brent was on the track, so big thank you to him, and big thank you to Tebbs, big thank you to Andrew Francis, the beach-dressed drone commander. Thank you, Andrew. And a big thank you to Jerry and Louise. I always say Louise for some reason. They've had a good time, and thank you to all of you. We'll see you tomorrow during the morning safari at 0500. See you then. Bye-bye.